So over the years, Lightroom has gained all sorts of new tools designed to make editing more powerful, intuitive, and creative. And more recently, we've seen the introduction of AI-powered editing tools in Lightroom that, in some cases, provide me with far superior results than other comparable tools like Generative Remove, and in other cases, handles tasks that I didn't think were possible, like reflection removal. However, because of the nature of how these AI edit tools work, it became necessary to develop an optimal order to apply them. And that's referred to as the order of AI edit operations, or more succinctly, the order of operations. And while this concept has been in Lightroom for the past few versions, we've continued to make improvements to how it's presented and provide more intuitive explanations of what exactly is happening when you use the different AI tools in Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw for that matter, because there is a direct relationship between the two apps. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the AI edit tools currently in Lightroom, show you what it looks like when you follow our prescribed order of operations, and what you'd need to do when you don't. My goal is that by the end of this video, you'll be much more comfortable with how to slot in these powerful AI edit tools within your workflow to ensure a smooth process. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so this is actually Lightroom version 8.5, which we just released. But I want to show you what the original kind of implementation of the AI edit status was. And to do that, we're going to go back to Lightroom 8.2, which we released earlier this year. And so basically what would happen is if you applied AI edits out of order, you would see this blue toast that says some AI settings need to be recomputed with an update button. It wouldn't tell you what needs to be updated, but you just click it and it would update the tools. Now, fortunately, we've come a long way from that blue toast with the introduction of the AI Edit Status menu. And even as recently as Lightroom 8.5, we've made the messaging in that menu even more intuitive, so it should give you a better idea of what will happen if you apply certain AI edits out of order. Now, speaking of that, I think the most helpful thing to do now is to show you really quickly what the AI Edit order of operations list is. But then we're going to go into Lightroom and I'm just going to apply them in order. And I'm going to use the tools that I think are most broadly applicable to users. And I'll show you what I mean right now. So this is the AI edit order of operations list. I copied it from the Adobe HelpX article because I made some markups to it, but I'll link to that HelpX article in the description below. And so right off the bat, the first thing I want to show you is that I bolded all of the actual AI edit tools. And really, those are the ones that I'm going to focus on most in this video. And you see that HDR is at the top, but that primarily affects JPEGs and HEIC files taken with mobile devices that have HDR gain maps. And before we jump over to Lightroom, where I'm going to apply the bolded tools in the order that we have here, I want to talk about two terms that I'm going to use often. The first is upstream, and the second is downstream. So upstream means that it occurs further up on the list from whichever filter I'm referring to, and downstream means that it occurs further below in the list. So let's look at lens blur as an example. Let's say I apply lens blur to my image, and then afterwards I apply generative remove. Well, you can see lens blur is number 8 in this list. Gen remove occurs upstream from that in number 7. But let's say instead of applying gen remove, I first apply lens blur just like before, but then I apply an adaptive profile. Well, that occurs downstream from it because lens blur is in number 8 and the adaptive profile is further down at number 11. And so again, I don't want to assume that me saying upstream and downstream just makes sense to everybody, which is why I'm being a bit more exhaustive in this video by explaining this stuff. It's probably going to be a bit of a longer video. And because I know it confuses a lot of people, I think it warrants the extra time. So now let's go over to Lightroom, because what I want to do is I'm going to apply, like I mentioned, those AI edits in the specific order that is in the list. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom 8.5, and this is an AI generated image. I've used it before because it allows me to show you all of the AI edits that will be applied to this image. I don't have to worry about whether it'll fail detection or not. Now, I mentioned the AI edit status tool, and that is available right here via this icon. It's currently inactive because, as you can see in the tooltip, no AI edits have been used on this photo. So bringing up the list over here, you can see that the first AI tool that I'm going to apply is denoise. Really, you can apply denoise, raw details, or super resolution. So I'm going to scroll down to the detail section here of the edit panel and click on denoise. Now you can see that the AI edit status icon is active, but it's not illuminated. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. However, if you click here, you can see here is the AI edit status menu. And you can see it says that the following AI settings have been applied to this photo, and it lists denoise. Now, next on the list, you can see is reflection removal. So I'm going to go to the remove panel, expand reflections, and click apply. Now you can see if we click on the AI edit status menu, there is reflections in the number 2 spot. Moving on, let's go to distracting people removal. You can see it detects that little spot on the left, so I'm going to go ahead and click on remove. And once again, you can see that that has been reflected in the AI edit status menu list. Now, next in the list is dust removal, which was added to Adobe Camera Raw 17.5 as an early access tool. And I covered that in my What's New video, which I'll link to at the end of this one in case you missed that. But because dust removal is not currently in Lightroom, we can't apply it. So it doesn't affect us here. Right now, I'm only focusing on the Lightroom tools, which means that we're not only going to skip dust removal, but we're also going to skip Gen Expand because that is also a Camera Raw only tool. However, next on the list is a tool we do have, and that is Gen Remove. So I'm going to go ahead here and make a stroke and then click remove. Then again, you can see that is in the list over here. After that, we're going to go back to the edit panel all the way to the bottom and enable lens blur. You can see lens blur is there, then all the way to the top to apply the adaptive color profile. You can see that is below lens blur now. And then finally, we're going to apply an adaptive mask. So I'm going to select subject and just make it a little bit brighter. And then again, finally here, you can see the 7 AI edit tools in Lightroom in the correct order based on the order of operations list. And we know that it's in the correct order because none of these tools are highlighted in yellow. So you remember earlier I talked about how the AI edit status icon was active but not highlighted. Anytime that icon is highlighted in yellow or any of the tools within the menu are yellow, that means you have invalidated that edit. And so this is the kind of crux of the order of operations. Again, you can apply your edits in any order you want. It's just that if you apply them out of order via the list, you could invalidate certain pixels. And in some cases, it really doesn't have much of an impact. But in other cases, it could have a material impact on your image. And so I'm going to explain to you what that looks like. And to do that, I'm going to start just by resetting this over here. You can see that the AI edit status icon is now dimmed out because we have no edits applied to the image. So let's start with what I would consider to be one of my most common methods of invalidating edits. Almost always, the first thing that I do with my images is I apply the adaptive color profile. So you can see it's applied here, and if I click over here, it's the only tool here. I'm also going to turn off HDR just because the screen recording software doesn't support it. Now, one of the other edits that I almost always apply at the beginning of my workflow is denoise. And so watch. If I go ahead here and click on denoise, when we look at the list, you can see that denoise falls upstream of the adaptive profile, like way upstream, and it's indicated as such because the AI edit status icon is highlighted in yellow, which is what I was talking about. And if I click it, you can see two things. First, you can see that denoise is in fact upstream from adaptive profile because it's not like this is a random order. This is the order of operations that we display these tools in. The other thing you'll see is that we are illustrating which of the tools has been invalidated and needs to be updated. And we do that by highlighting its icon in yellow. Now, in this situation, updating the adaptive profile won't really have an impact. It's just going to put all of the pixels in a correct state. So you can see here, we are now in a good state. But there is another scenario that I think is very important for users to consider in terms of the order of operations. I'm going to go ahead here, reset the edits again, and let's start by going to the remove tool here, and I'm going to make a nice big remove stroke, something like this. Just going to get rid of all of that and replace it with something else. You can see we have our variations here. I'm going to stick with this one. Now let's repeat the process of applying denoise. Once again, you can see that the AI edit status icon is highlighted. Now, here's the important distinction between the previous example where we just applied the adaptive color profile and this one where we use the Gen Remove tool. You can see there's a line item here that is new to Lightroom 8.5 that says new variations will be generated. And this is very important because let's say you started your edit with the Gen Remove brush and you got rid of a certain area and you were really happy with the variation that was given to you. In this scenario, as soon as you click the Update All button, it will rerun Gen Remove and it will provide you with new variations, which is why, again, it is really important to think about the order in which you apply certain edits. If you never really use denoise, it probably won't affect you. But I know a lot of users do, which is why it's so important to consider using denoise at the beginning of your workflow. And so you can see, watch, pay attention to this area here. I'm going to click on Update All. And you can see we have completely new variations. If I go to Remove here and I select that spot, we have totally different variations. So depending on the results that you had, you might not be happy with these results, in which case you can regenerate them. That's not a problem. But it's important to know that in this situation here with the Gen Remove tool and the Distracting People tool, if you apply them before denoise or before something that is also further upstream, it's going to generate new results. And so really quickly, I'm going to delete this spot here to illustrate with Distracting People removal. It also uses Firefly, just like the Gen Remove tool does. I'm going to click on Remove, and you can see that the AI Edit Status tool is not highlighted because we had denoise applied first. And because denoise is so high on the order of operations, pretty much anything you do after it won't invalidate those edits. Now, there's one quick practical example that I want to show you too. I think this does a great job of visualizing what it actually looks like when I talk about invalidating pixels. And once you see this, I think it'll really click in. So I actually used this photo in my What's New in Lightroom 8.4 video to illustrate how reflection removal works. And I'm going to do that here too. But let's say I decide to go out of order. Like, let's say I'm like, you know what, that sign is bothering me, so I'm going to use the Gen Remove tool to get rid of it. Like, totally reasonable. I think anyone would, consider doing that. So let's go ahead and click on Remove. And it looks great, right? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I actually also want to change the profile to adaptive color. And if we look at the AI Edit Status menu, everything's looking good. But then we're like, oh, actually, I want to also actually remove the reflection. So we'll go back to Remove, we'll expand Reflections, and click Apply. And here you can see where things start going wrong. First, you can see that the image itself is like really dark, like especially dark. And more importantly, you can see over here how this area just looks weird. This is actually a great visualization of what invalidated pixels look like. And I can take the amount slider here, bring it to -100. You can see that over there as well, but I want to keep it at +100 here. And more to the point, the AI Edit Status button is illuminated. And of course, we started with Gen Remove, and then we went downstream and applied the adaptive profile. But then we went way upstream and applied reflection removal. Now, fortunately, this is not a problem in that we can just update these two tools that are invalidated and put them into a good state. But of course, remember, remove will result in new variations being generated. But also good is that the adaptive color profile will be reprocessed. And you'll see in a second why that's a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Update All. And there you go. Now you see that the image looks really good. The adaptive profile was brought back to a good place. And those invalidated pixels over here now match correctly, even though a new variation was generated. And so I hope that now clicked in your mind in terms of when I say invalidated tools or invalidated pixels, you can now visualize exactly what I'm talking about. All right, now let's switch gears because I want to introduce Adobe Camera Raw into the workflow, specifically because it has two very popular AI tools that are not currently in Lightroom, and that is Gen Expand and the dust spot removal tool. So you can see I have this image here, and I already exported it to the desktop as a DNG file. And so I'm going to take this up here, and I'm going to open it up in Photoshop, which automatically launches Adobe Camera Raw. Mind you, if you want to use dust spots, you have to be on Camera Raw 17.5, and you'll also want to click on this gear icon, then click on Technology Previews, and make sure that this new AI features checkbox is selected. Now for this example, I'm going to use Gen Expand. I'm going to click on the crop icon here, and then I'm going to click on this checkbox to enable expand, which will let me outcrop, which means I can take this and drag it out this way. Then I'm going to click on generate, and you can see we have an expanded canvas. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on done, which will write those changes to the sidecar file in the DNG. Now let's go back to Lightroom here. I'm going to click on grid. I'm going to open up the photo drawer here, and then I'm going to refresh the folder so that we bring in the edits. You can see that the thumbnail is slightly updated, and let's go ahead and open this here. Now you can see if I click on the AI edit status button, we have Gen Expand listed. So Lightroom, even though it doesn't have Gen Expand, it recognizes that Gen Expand is there. It renders the pixels that came from Adobe Camera Raw. The same thing would happen if you applied dust spot removal. It would recognize those pixels even though the tool is not currently in Lightroom. With that said, more than the gen remove or the distracting people removal implications, I would say that there are even greater implications in this situation where you're working between Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom, where the order of operations is very important. Let me show you what I mean right now. So we've got Gen Expand here. You can see if I hit the backslash key, there's the original. You can see the way the canvas has been expanded. Now, let's say I'm like, oh, you know what? I meant to apply denoise. If we look at the list, denoise is well upstream of Gen Expand, which is in the number 6 spot here. So let's go ahead and apply denoise. You can see the AI edit status icon is highlighted. When I click on it, you can see that Gen Expand is invalidated, but more to the point, because Gen Expand isn't in Lightroom, those pixels from Adobe Camera Raw will be removed. So let's go ahead and click on Update All, and you can see as a result, we've effectively undone the Gen Expand edit. And when we click on the AI edit status icon, you'll see it's not even listed here anymore. Now, fortunately, all of the edits that I've applied to the image before I sent it to Adobe Camera Raw, they're still here. It's just that we lost that Gen Expand canvas. So does that mean that you can't use Gen Expand with Lightroom at all? No, it's just a matter of following the order of operations. So hopefully with this demo, it'll really click in for you. Again, if we look at the list, denoise is at the top. And if denoise is not something that you care about or you're not going to use, it probably won't impact you. But because I know that a lot of users apply denoise, let's start with the assumption that you've applied denoise, which we have. You can see we've applied denoise. Now I'm going to go ahead and press G to go to grid. Basically what this does is it writes the edits to the DNG file. Now I'm going to hide Photoshop for a second. There's the same DNG file. I'm going to open it up in Camera Raw again. And when I click on the AI edit status button, you can see that denoise is listed. And that's a good thing because denoise, as I've said many times, is the kind of top level AI edit tool. Well, it's not just denoise, it's also raw details and super resolution. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to stick with denoise. Because it's already here, you can see if we go over to the detail panel, ACR recognizes it, it's active, we're good to go. So let's repeat the process here. I'm going to enable expand. Let's expand the canvas, click generate, click done. And then let's refresh the folder. And you can see there is the original. And then that is our edit with the Gen Expand pixels. Also, again, you can see Gen Expand is down here. Now, there are other AI edit tools in between denoise and Gen Expand that could also put you in an invalidated state. For example, like reflection removal. So if I go here and we look at the list, you can see that reflection removal sits right below denoise, but it's also above Gen Expand. So if I go ahead and I apply it, you can see just like before, Gen Expand, because it's downstream from reflection removal, has been invalidated. And in case you're wondering like what the full list looks like, including the tools that are in Adobe Camera Raw, I took this screenshot here that shows all of the AI edit tools applied in the order based on the AI edit tool order of operations list. And if I put the list up here, you can see that they match perfectly. All right, so listen, that was a lot. I know it was a lot for me. And I did this, I created this comprehensive video because I genuinely believe it's very important. As we continue to add AI tools into Lightroom and Camera Raw, the order of operations list will grow, and understanding where each tool falls, not only in the list, but also within your own personal workflow, is very important. In most cases, it probably won't affect you that much. Like if you're just using the adaptive color profile, like I said, and lens blur, that won't do much in terms of negative impact. However, if you're one who does a lot of gen remove strokes, or you're using the distracting removal people tool, in those situations, if you apply an AI edit upstream of either of those two tools, you could put yourself in a position where you have to regenerate those pixels and get different results. So that's why I think it's really important to really drive these points home, that there is an optimal prescribed order of operations, and take a look at it. Maybe have it off on the side when you start editing photos, especially if you use the AI edit tools. If you don't, then it really doesn't affect you much. But if you do, it might help to have that list somewhere nearby and develop a habit like, okay, you know what? I'm going to apply denoise first if the image needs it, and then move down the list. You know, maybe I'll then take care of getting rid of the reflections if there are any, distracting people, and so on. Just pay attention to the list. Now, of course, the same thing goes with the ACR tools, the Adobe Camera Raw tools. Like, see where those slot in and just fit it within your editing workflow. And once you do that a few times, trust me, because this happened with me, it becomes second nature. So with that, I really do appreciate you sticking through this very heady video. And of course, the AI edit status function is just a small part of Lightroom. So if you want to learn everything else that surrounds it, then please do check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And I also mentioned that I have this video that shows all the other new tools in Lightroom 8.5 and Adobe Camera Raw 17.5. So check it out. If you found this video helpful, a thumbs up greatly helps the channel. And please be sure to click on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.